When Hermione Granger returns to Hogwarts as Professor of Muggle Studies 2 years after the end of the war, you are surprised. Muggle Studies? That is. Well, even you thought she would make more of her intelligence, and there were times when you didn't even give her any credit for intelligence worth mentioning. Yet here she is, starting to teach, looking just like you, like it's the most horrible job in the world, true, and better than the alternative, questionable. It takes you about half a year to figure out the reasons for this absurd decision. Which is only because Minerva is no help. When you ask her about it, and as deputy headmaster you have every right to ask, she just says, "Absurd? What is absurd about that, Severus?" Hermione is an excellent teacher and she obviously enjoys it. Yes. About as much as having to cut Argus toenails. No, the non-existent benefits of being a teacher of the least popular subject taught at Hogwarts were definitely not Granger's reason for taking the job. Not after having a position at the ministry. Did she ruin it? The little Gryffindor know-it-all who always made a sport out of breaking the rules as much as possible? But you've never heard of anything like that, and you still have a few contacts in the ministry. If she had made a faux pas that cost her the job, you would have heard about it. Maybe she lost a bet. But Granger doesn't seem like the type of person to gamble her career. It couldn't have been a favor for Minerva either. There were several applicants for the position, and none of them were suitable to replace Charity, none. But no doubt Minerva knows the reasons. She would never have hired Granger without knowing the reasons for this absurd decision. And so you spend 5.5 months trying to get those reasons out of her. By betting on the outcome of the Quidditch matches, by trying to beat her at chess, by buying a bottle of really expensive whiskey and inviting yourself to her office for a cozy evening, sick. You even reminisce with her. But none of it is successful. On the contrary, Minerva is full of glee because she knows exactly what you intend to do, and has no intention of being tricked by you. When she walks you to the door after that evening in her office and 4 hours of reminiscing about the good old days, hers, not yours, you didn't have anything like that, she even has the nerve to say, "Just ask her, Severus." Before slamming the door in your face, without anyone noticing the alcohol she's consumed in the last few hours. You hiss at the stupid door and stumble down the spiral staircase, because you can already tell that you've had the alcohol, and when Granger sits across from you at the staff meeting the next day, you glare at her for so long that you end up with a hangover again. And you don't. They ask. Instead, you decide that you don't care. Let her teach Muggle studies. What's it got to do with you? You've made enough of an imp of yourself, that's enough. So you follow through with this decision. Almost. When the answer practically dances right under your nose, in the form of Hermione Granger, who opens the window of an L in the staff room and makes the mistake of reading the letter right there, your decision wavers. Granger sinks into one of the armchairs in front of the fireplace with shaking hands, white as a sheet and so engrossed in her letter that she doesn't even notice that class is starting. Can you be blamed for getting curious under these circumstances? What happened? You snarl. Has the school board decided that you aren't Muggle-born enough to teach Muggle studies after all? Your voice stares her out of her trance. She looks up at you, her eyes wet with tears, and shakes her head when she realizes who is standing in front of her. No, it's nothing. Then she folds the letter and wipes her eyes before fleeing the staff room. Oh, for heaven's sake. What's behind it? And why is everyone making such a secret of it? Immediately, you're determined to solve this mystery again. And this time, you won't go through Minerva. This time, you'll bet with Granger on the outcome of the Quidditch matches, try to beat her at chess, and invite yourself to her office with a bottle of fire whiskey. The only problem is, Granger has a better feel for the school teams than you do, she refuses to play chess, and she doesn't drink alcohol. For heaven's sake. The easiest way is the last thing that occurs to you and, to be honest, it must be because of Nagini's attack. Something in your head went wrong, otherwise you can't explain or justify not having thought of it sooner. To get Phineas to reveal the secret, you don't need Quidditch betting or chess, and certainly not fire whiskey, although he would have liked that. In the end, however, an empty classroom and an evening in which you allude more often than ever to how much you have to stick together as a Slytherin headmaster is enough for him to tell you what was said during Granger's interview. And as is usually the case in life, the solution to the mystery is not nearly as satisfying as it should have been given the effort. That's it? You ask in disbelief, and when Phineas shrugs, you snort contemptuously. Apparently Granger doesn't have to bet her career at all. The fact that Weasley dumped her is more than enough. You only find out that there is more to all this when the school year is drawing to a close. That's how long it takes for Granger to lose her composure at your disdain. What exactly did I do to you? She yells at you, fortunately only after the students have already left the castle, but before the last teachers' meeting is over. And all because you rolled your eyes at her enthusiasm for this job and her anticipation of the next school year. Okay, maybe you shook your head. Anyway, now everyone is staring at you and you're staring at Granger. Angry. But she's angrier. All year you've had nothing but derogatory comments for me, when I was only doing my damn job. And better than you. Why can't you just leave me alone? You grind your teeth together while the teacher's lounge is so quiet you could have heard a pin drop. And you say nothing. Instead you let the corners of your mouth twitch, just a little. And a little more when Granger's anger erupts in the form of crackling magic over her hair and whirls the papers on the table into your face. By the time you can see again, she has already stormed out of the staff room. Was that really necessary, Severus? Asks Phileas, shaking his head as he stands up to leave as well. The others follow him, one by one, until in the end only Minerva is left. She looks at you angrily. I want this to stop, Severus. I bet you will, you snarl. She stands up. I'm serious, either you stop constantly attacking Hermione or I'll have to fire you. You snort. She's the one you should fire. You say loudly, standing up as well. Instead, you're allowing her to hide here just because Weasley is an idiot. You know as well as I do that this place is a joke. Hermione Granger is too good to be teaching a bunch of snotty-nosed brats about subways and general elections. Stop, Minerva thunders, getting worked up about things you don't understand, Severus. It's none of your business why Hermione is here. All you have to do is respect her. And if you don't, she won't be the one I throw out. She flicks the papers into her arms and struts off. You watch her go angrily. And catch Granger at the school gates, just before she can apparate home for the summer. What? She snaps when you call her name. Why? You do what you had actually sworn not to do, you ask? Why this job? Why are you letting Weasley chase you away from a profession that suits you much better and in which you could have achieved so much more of what you wanted to achieve? Why? She laughs and puts her hands on her hips. Why should I tell you? So you can mess me up even more next year? You curl your lips. One word to Minerva and she'll throw me out. Really? Granger raises her eyebrows. And you nod, even though you don't like it. But Minerva would have told her anyway, no point in keeping it a secret. All the more reason not to tell you. Next year it's my turn to mess you up. Then she disapparates. For God's sake. Granger keeps her word, she's wearing you down. And she enjoys it. This woman would have been so much better off in Slytherin, but then she would have been your problem, much sooner than she is now, and she might not have survived long enough to graduate. Even now, things aren't looking good for the end of this school year, because every time she starts a sentence with "when I was still working for the ministry," you want to wring her neck. And when you see her whispering to Minerva in the staff room, usually with an expression as if the Dark Lord had announced his return, your eyelids twitch. They do it on purpose right under your nose. When Minerva then says at a conference, "I'm really impressed by how harmonious the staff are this year, how well everyone gets along and how nice it is to work with you," you want to throw your coffee in her face. Instead, you get up and leave, and the giggles of your colleagues follow you out into the hallway and down into the dungeons. It isn't until spring that Granger finally stops trying to improve her bad mood at your expense. And because you are curious and Minerva has assigned you to supervise the Hogsmeade weekend, you follow Granger and see her meeting a woman in the Three Broomsticks. Long brown hair, round face, you don't know her. But the two of them are giving each other such loving looks that you didn't even have to see the kiss to realize that Granger is obviously over Weasley. You raise an eyebrow. Interesting. Whatever. After that, you are so convinced that Granger will leave Hogwarts again at the end of the school year to pursue a more promising career that the last few weeks fly by and you actually find your good mood again. Granger doesn't care, but Minerva is disappointed. She definitely enjoyed pushing your buttons too much. All the better that you have your buttons under control again. What you can't control is the look on your face when Granger doesn't announce her departure at the last conference of the year. She looks at you extremely confused before following the others, and Minerva? She grins because there is obviously still a button she can push. Do you really still need to hide here at Hogwarts? You tease as you run into each other in the entrance hall on the way out of the castle. Excuse me? You wrinkle your nose. Don't act like you don't know what I mean. I saw you with that woman in the Three Broomsticks. It can't be Weasley's fault that you're hiding out here anymore. She stares at you, then laughs in disbelief. Are you spying on me? There's hardly any need to spy on someone who's meeting someone in public, Miss Granger. I was in charge of the Hogsmeade weekend. If you wanted to keep your private life secret, meet somewhere else." Her face hardens. "The secret thing is more your thing, sir." She grabs her suitcase and marches out onto the grounds. You follow her. And yet you make a secret of why you're hiding out here in a job for which you are mercilessly overqualified. You could improve the magical world for many of its inhabitants if you went back to the ministry. "Maybe I don't want to make the world a better place," she blurts out and whirls around to face you. "Maybe I'm tired of constantly making the world a better place for everyone while she stops. "Why do you even care?" she rants instead. "Just leave me alone." And this time you don't stop her as she rushes off towards the school gates. You just watch after her with pursed lips. Although her aborted remark about her world does not leave you alone, you leave her alone from then on. Year after year, Granger stays at Hogwarts and teaches Muggle studies, is appointed guidance counselor by Minerva, sets up a counseling center in the castle with Poppy, and becomes one of the most valued members of the staff. You watch from afar, still thinking that in another life she might have almost been Minister for Magic at this point, but you keep your thoughts to yourself. Which is easier for you at some times than at others. Granger's mood changes. Sometimes she seems happy with her life here, almost bubbling over with energy, which she can hardly live up to here, and makes even you believe that this is the place where she is best off. And sometimes she is the opposite of all that. She withdraws, looks pale and tired, even rivals your moods, and talks to Minerva so often that you get the impression that she could use some counseling at her own counseling center. But even at these times you leave her alone. Instead you concentrate on your research. Now that the Dark Lord is a thing of the past and you only have to teach and look after a quarter of the Hogwarts students, you actually have time for it. And eventually enough results to publish a book about it. It is not the first book you have brought to market, but it is the first to bear your name. And your almost disgustingly good mood coincides with a phase of Granger's almost disgustingly bad mood. It is all the more astonishing that your book seems to help her overcome this phase. It already looks pretty well read when one evening she sits down with you in front of the fireplace in the staff room and asks if she can ask you a few questions. And there are so many notes in it that it's hard to get going, even more so after you've been arguing with her for a couple of hours. Then her cheeks are red and she thanks you as she gets up and leaves. You look after her and are amazed at how much a few years and a few hours can change. 4 or 5 years ago you wouldn't have been able to talk like that and she didn't look so enthusiastic before. So you do it regularly after that. Discuss things with each other. Granger comes to you with new questions, sometimes with a bottle of wine, sometimes with books by other authors, but always with good topics in it. Surprisingly, you enjoy talking to her. Surprisingly, for the first time, you find something good about the fact that she made the absurd decision to take this job here 8 years ago. So much good that you finally offer to call her by your first name. Minerva almost threw a party because of it. But then it's suddenly over. You don't know why. But from one day to the next, Hermione stops sitting down with you and discussing things with you or even talking to you at all. There's no more wine, no questions, no shop talk. And when you want to sit down next to her, she quickly excuses herself and leaves. You didn't know that Gryffindors were capable of avoiding someone so stubbornly. And you didn't know that Slytherins could be so hurt by it. But they can. You can be hurt. Especially since you are not aware of any guilt. If someone else ignores you, at least you know what you have done. But this time? You are probably hurt because of it. Enough, anyway, that after about 3 weeks of radio silence, you stand in front of the door to Hermione's rooms and knock loudly. "What do you want?" she asks coolly, looking just past your eyes. "I want to know what happened." "What are you talking about?" You look at her darkly. "Don't play dumb." She folds her arms in front of her chest. "It's nothing, please just leave me alone." And wants to close the door right in front of you. But you hold her tight and when she looks you in the eyes for the first time that evening, and in 3 weeks, they are swimming in tears. "What did I do wrong?" you ask, at least as surprised as she is. When did she become so important to you that you ask questions like that instead of licking your wounds in a bad mood and drinking a lot of alcohol? "Nothing." She insists and starts to cry. "It's not you, she breaks off because the tears steal her voice. You sigh. Look left and right and then gently push her back into her room. Hermione doesn't resist, she even lets you lead her to the armchair that's in front of the window. A cup of tea that's probably long gone cold is on the windowsill and you get a chair before sitting down opposite her and catching her eye. "What's wrong?" you ask. I can't do this again," she sobs, and you can hardly understand her because she is hiding her face behind her hands. "What can't you do again?" you ask, more patiently than you ever thought possible. "Merlin, she has really become important to you." Hermione wrinkles her nose and calls herself a box of tissues. Falling in love and then losing that person, she finally whispers and pulls her feet up onto the chair. You frown. "What are you talking about, woman?" She snorts, shakes her head and looks up into the corner of the room as more tears run down her cheeks. "Soulmates," she finally says disdainfully. You back away in the chair, in front of her, straightening up. Your heart is suddenly beating much too fast, much too fast. "Excuse me?" Hermione swallows hard and looks at you bitterly. "Apparently my only purpose in this damn life is to introduce other soulmates to each other." She wipes her cheeks. "Every time I dare to fall in love and introduce these people to someone, it turns out that they are soulmates. And I?" She presses her lips together and snorts bitterly. "I'm staying behind." You stare at her and can't stop, even though you know you're staring at her. Your right wrist tingles and suddenly everything that happened back then is very close again. As if it were standing next to you, tickling the back of your neck with ice-cold fingers. That's how it was with Ron, who is now married to my colleague Holly. With Amber, who fell in love with Lavender. With Chris, who, again she breaks off. It doesn't matter. She wipes her eyes. It never bothered me that they weren't my soulmates, you know? I know a few relationships that are happy without all that. But it never worked for me and I can't do it again. There is something final in her voice that makes you wince inside. And again, as she looks you in the eyes. So I'll end it first. It takes you a few seconds to remember that you can use your mouth. And you swallow hard. The first thing you say is as unpredictable to you as it was to Hermione. "Weasley is an idiot." She shakes her head. "No, he's not. He didn't want to give up on us, but I saw how bad it made him feel, and Holly, and ultimately me, too, so I left. Here. It was better that way." "Really?" You sneer. She nods, her gaze lowered to her hands and the handkerchief again. "Yes. In fact, it is only that one word, the wavering in her voice, and the hair falling over her face that triggers another thought. Every time I dare to fall in love." That's what she said, right? And it's you she's been avoiding for a few weeks. Does that mean that? You blink, grab the bridge of your nose, and take a deep breath. "Well, whatever." You force yourself to say after a while. "That doesn't mean you have to avoid me." "What do you mean?" she asks wearily. You grit your teeth. Then you pull back your sleeve a little and take off the watch you wear above the gray band that wraps around your wrist. Hermione gasps when she sees it. "I had a soulmate. As you know, she's dead. So it doesn't matter who you introduce me to." She leans forward in her chair, stunned. She even forgets to cry, and if you hadn't instinctively pulled your hand back a little, she would have touched the mark that was originally red and that you have refused to think about since Lily died. "Severus." You shake your head and put the watch back on. "Let it be," you murmur, and after everything is back in its place, you stand up. And stop feeling sorry for yourself. There is no reason for it. Then you leave her rooms, with weak knees and a little dizzy in your head. It isn't until 3 floors down that the thought you refuse to finish catches up with you again. Does that mean that she has fallen in love with you? For God's sake. In the days that follow, you withdraw and hardly show your face in the staff room. Hermione doesn't even try to talk to you. Maybe she needs time to think about it all. In any case, a lot is going through your head. Not just everything that happened with Hermione, everything that suddenly makes sense with this one piece of the puzzle. But also everything that happened with Lily. You were still children when the red ribbons bloomed on your wrists. And when your mother explained to you what they meant, you found it exciting and didn't think about it for a long time. You were only children. But after it turned out that it is actually possible to scare away a soulmate if you try hard enough, you often thought about how important he was to you anyway, the thought that there is a person who belongs to you. Who you are related to in a way that transcends blood. If you'd known that, you would have tried harder. And maybe you would have failed anyway. You are who you are. And what you are is a person who ruins the best things in life for yourself. Why should that be an exception? Sometimes, during the 2 years after Lily ended your friendship, you thought about what she might have told Potter. You both hid your mark when you went to Hogwarts, you with the watch, she with a bracelet. No one knew you were soulmates. You wonder if she told Potter that the bond had appeared because of him. Or if she had the courage to tell him the truth. But Potter probably would have tormented you even more if he'd known the truth. He probably died believing he was her soulmate. The thought bothered you more than you wanted to admit. Before things went wrong with you and Lily, you even tried to kiss once or twice. When you got older and realized what soulmates meant. That's what soulmates do, apparently. They love each other and are together. A couple. But with you, it never really worked out. After she died and the red ribbon turned gray, you stopped thinking about all these things. You hardly ever took your watch off and pretended that this branch of magic didn't exist. Here at Hogwarts, you rarely had to deal with it. The teachers here are teachers here because they haven't found a soulmate, or, as in Minerva's case, they found them later and lost them again. And the students rarely find theirs before they leave school. It's not that common for someone to find their soulmate while still at school or earlier. Lily and you were an exception, not the rule. But Hermione's story brings the whole annoying topic back into focus and so you withdraw. For a while. This while also extends into the next summer holidays and it does you good to clear your head. You travel all over Britain, the Highlands, Wales, Orkney, the Hebrides, Northern Ireland, the south of England, collecting potion ingredients, ideas, and enjoying being outside, being alone. But sometimes, when you're sitting alone in your tent at night, you take your watch off and run your finger along the grill line. When you return to Hogwarts on time for September 1st, you have cleaned up everything that happened back then and start sitting in the staff room in front of the fireplace with a book. After a while, Hermione asks you if she can keep you company. And you say yes. It takes about 2 months before you end up in bed together. And neither Hermione's nor your mood has ever been this good in recent years. Sometimes you find it scary how comfortable you feel with her. And how close you came to ruining it with her too. Fuck soulmates, she gasps as she. And you. And you nod. Yeah, fuck it. No, you are not soulmates, but that doesn't mean that what you have is bad. Or inferior. All it does mean is that you are scared, because no bond has blossomed around Hermione's wrist yet. And you are not the only one of you who is scared. Hermione has it too. The longer you are together, the worse it gets. I'll just never shake anyone's hand again, she decides during the first year just before falling asleep. What do you think of Antarctica? She asks just before your second anniversary. Just you and me, forever. And a few months later, I hope I never find my soulmate. While she watches you brew potions for the hospital wing. And you? You hope too. Hope that she finds him soon, hope that she never finds him, hope that you can handle whatever comes next. You are less open about your thoughts and your fear than Hermione, you always have been. But it is there. Sometimes, when Hermione is sleeping in your arms, you take her hand and study the flawless skin as if it could answer the question that keeps you awake despite everything, what if she does meet her soulmate? Then you turn your head and look at her as best you can in this position and ask yourself, if so, would you have preferred to have done without this? Your discussions, your bickering, your good mood? The nights spent together and waking up together? Not falling asleep alone and understanding each other with just a glance? And you are sure that you would not have wanted that? To give it up? Yes, perhaps this has an expiration date. Perhaps Hermione will meet someone at some point who will be closer to her and understand her better than you. And then she will break up with you and you will let her go because she deserves to be as happy as possible. But right now, it is not that time. Right now, you are good for each other and perhaps you would even go so far as to say that something is healing in Hermione. That all the broken hearts that time has given her are healing. Hers. And perhaps yours too. But eventually, a while later, the time comes. And ultimately, it's your fault. You always knew how important Potter and Weasley were to Hermione. They may not be soulmates, but they are kindred spirits and they have been through too much together to spend their lives apart. So you encouraged Hermione to get back in touch with them. To return to the friendships that she reduced to birthday and Christmas cards so many years ago, to return to the family that goes with them. Since Hermione no longer has one of her own and neither do you, it's all the more important for her. And this evening she's coming from one of those family celebrations at the Burrow, which, with all the children that have been born in recent years, must be far too small to host such large celebrations. How many expansion spells can you cast on a building before it collapses? But Hermione has no hair in her hair as she enters your rooms, slams the door behind her and leans against it, her eyes a little red and her hands hiding from your gaze. You know immediately what has happened. You lean back in your chair, look at her and ask, who is it? Because you deserve to know, don't you? She swallows hard. And when she says the name for the first time, she does it so quietly that you can't hear her. She clears her throat and repeats, Fleur. You frown. Bill Weasley's wife? She nods. And you blink. She's not his? Nope. But they have children, right? Yes. Soon to be 3. You comment on that with a sharp intake of breath. Does he know yet? Hermione nods. And she's still standing over there at the door, as if she doesn't dare enter your rooms anymore, and you're glad about that. A little distance is good right now. And? She shrugs her shoulders. He doesn't see a problem with it. Oh, no? She shakes her head. Me neither, by the way. You narrow your eyes a little, and when she smiles crookedly, you feel the frown that Hermione is constantly trying to erase digging itself between your eyebrows. Fleur is happy with Bill, Severus. And I am happy with you. She pushes herself away from the door and comes to you now, even though you liked the distance. I didn't dare hope for it, but there are couples who are not soulmates and are still happy, and we will be one of them. Soulmates don't mean you have to be a couple. Bill's soulmate is Charlie. They have both had the marks since they were babies. And Fleur and I? She purses her lips. Honestly, I didn't know how well I could get along with her. How many topics we have to talk about. It's so fascinating how Beauxbatons and France in general view Britain and how they understand some magical theories, and she stops when she sees you grin and blushes. What I'm trying to say is, I haven't fallen in love with Fleur and I won't fall in love with her. Tonight, Severus, we talked so much, Fleur and Bill and I love you and she loves Bill. We're not that kind of soulmate. She bites her lower lip, then grimaces and shrugs her shoulders apologetically. But I'm afraid we'll be having more visitors now, because I swear she's going to be my best friend. Is that so? You ask oilily. Hermione nods with a broad grin. Oh yes. And I'm the very last person who saw that coming. You let out a dry laugh. Don't be so sure. Fleur Weasley, formerly Delacour, could there be 2 women less alike than Hermione and her? And at the same time, it seems to fit, doesn't it? You can imagine the 2 of them talking for hours, laughing, finding inside jokes, occasionally touching each other, looking deep into each other's eyes. Hermione comes around your desk, pushes your chair back a little and climbs onto your lap. I love you, Severus, she whispers again, and I will not leave you heartbroken. Never. You mutter quietly as she kisses you. And what if they do? It flashes through your mind. What if the 2 of them fall in love after all? What if Hermione decides she would rather share her life with her soulmate? What if she leaves you heartbroken one day? Maybe you should just end it now. You're the kind of person who ruins the best things in life for yourself. You know how it works. So why not play it safe and... Don't even think about it, Hermione breathes, looking at you sternly. I won't let that happen. What? You ask darkly. That you leave and I'm left with a broken heart again. I can't do that again, I won't let that happen. Maybe she's a better fit for you. No. She shakes her head. How do you know? How do you know it's different? You snort quietly. Touché. Hermione smiles. Trust me, Severus. Let me prove to you every day that I love you. Give me the chance to choose you again every day. You take her hand that is resting on your chest, lift it up, and study the no longer flawless skin of her wrist. The delicate band that blossomed on it that evening is deep red, and unlike yours, which is just a simple line, Hermione's is sprouting small leaves and flowers. It looks beautiful and you stroke it with your thumb as you say, it wouldn't be the first absurd decision you've made. No, she grins, but it's the best. Then she lowers her eyes, leans her forehead against yours and sighs deeply. What's wrong? You ask, hating the way a splinter of doubt immediately pierces your chest again. Hermione shakes her head almost imperceptibly. I just have to think about how much I would have been spared if I had just shaken Fleur's hand once back then. You grumble again, but this time it sounds different. Do you really think you would have been spared something? If you don't want to be with her, do you think you wouldn't have fallen in love like you did just because you knew who your soulmate was? Oh, I would have fallen in love anyway. But I wouldn't have had to worry about losing you for the last few years. The tear that runs down her cheek as she says it is a testament to those years, hers and yours. Fuck soulmates, you say, wiping the tear away. She smiles. Yeah, fuck it, she whispers. Besides, if I'd had Fleur back then, I might never have ended up here, and then I would never have wrapped you around my finger with my absurd decisions. Wrapped you around my finger? You repeat, snubbed, raising an eyebrow. Absolutely, she whispers, kissing you again. The warmth of her lips melts the shard of doubt, And a little bit of the cold ball of fear that has been sitting deep in your stomach ever since you decided to get involved with Hermione Granger, even though no red ribbon had blossomed on her right wrist. It will take a while for it to completely disappear, but that doesn't matter. You have time. And peace. Now you have both. At some point you will be able to believe that neither of you will be left with a broken heart again and, to be honest, that is the most absurd decision fate could have made.